Hello, and welcome to Providing Reasonable Accommodations to Employees with Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, or PTSD, a training module that will provide you with information on PTSD, the limitations in the workplace that may be associated with it, and effective accommodations that can be provided to help employees be more successful. What is post-traumatic stress disorder? Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental health condition that develops after a terrifying ordeal that involves physical harm or the threat of physical harm. The person who develops PTSD may have been the one who was harmed, the harm may have happened to a loved one, or the person may have witnessed a harmful event that happened to loved ones or strangers. PTSD symptoms typically start within 3 months of a traumatic event, but may not appear until years after the event. The symptoms are generally grouped into 3 types: intrusive memories, avoidance and numbing, and increased anxiety and/or emotional arousal. These symptoms make it difficult to go about daily life, go to work or school, and take care of important tasks. Symptoms of intrusive memories may include flashbacks or re-experiencing the trauma over and over, including physical symptoms like a racing heart or sweating. Bad dreams and frightening thoughts are also a part of intrusive memories. These symptoms may cause problems in a person's everyday routine. They can start from the person's own thoughts and feelings. Words, objects, or situations that are reminders of the event can also trigger re-experiencing. Symptoms of avoidance and emotional numbing may include staying away from places, events, or objects that are reminders of the experience, feeling emotionally numb, feeling a strong sense of guilt, depression, or worry, losing interest in activities that were enjoyable in the past, having trouble remembering the dangerous event, and difficulty with memory and concentration in general. Things that remind a person of the traumatic event can trigger avoidance symptoms. These symptoms may cause a person to change his or her personal routine. Symptoms of anxiety and increased emotional arousal may include being easily startled, feeling tense or on edge, having difficulty sleeping, and irritability or anger. These symptoms make it hard to do daily tasks such as sleeping, eating, concentrating, and getting along with others. PTSD was first brought to public attention in relation to war veterans, but it can result from a variety of traumatic incidences that include mugging, rape, torture, kidnapping, child abuse, car accidents, plane crashes, bombings, and natural disasters such as floods, tornadoes, or earthquakes. Employers often have questions about employees with PTSD that concern workplace violence. The best guidance we can give is to help employers understand that they do not want to make broad assumptions about individuals with PTSD. Employers shouldn't assume that people with PTSD are more likely to be violent than people without PTSD or any other mental health impairment. This is a myth. The wide range of behaviors associated with PTSD vary from passivity to disruptiveness. When the illness is active, the individual may or may not be at risk of harming him or herself or others. Employers shouldn't assume that people with PTSD take or should take medication, cannot work in a wide variety of jobs that require a wide range of skills and abilities, do not know what is best for them, have poor judgment, or that they are unable to cope with stress. Do employees with PTSD pose a direct threat to themselves or others? People who have PTSD do not necessarily pose a direct threat to themselves or others. Employees who control their conditions through medication or therapy probably pose no current risk. Even if a direct threat exists, employers should consider reducing or eliminating the threat by providing reasonable accommodations. Now let's take a look at some of the limitations that can be associated with the disorder. People with PTSD may develop some of the limitations discussed below, but seldom develop all of them. Also, the degree of limitation will vary among individuals. The limitations associated with PTSD include issues with attendance, concentration, emotions, fatigue, memory, organization, panic attacks, sleep disturbances, stress, coworker interactions, and working effectively. There is no list of impairments that qualify as disabilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. To qualify as a person with a disability, an individual must have a mental or physical impairment and be substantially limited in one or more major life activities. Major life activities include, but are not limited to, walking, talking, sleeping, reproducing, normal cell growth, digestive, neurological, and respiratory functioning. Substantially limited means that a person is more limited than the average person. So in order to determine if someone qualifies as a person with a disability under the ADA, you have to look back at the definition. However, the EEOC states that there are some impairments that will virtually always constitute a disability because they substantially limit brain function. PTSD is one of them. Now we are going to move into the main part of the module, looking at some common accommodations that may be provided to employees with PTSD. Be aware that not all employees with PTSD will need accommodations to perform their jobs, and many others may only need a few accommodations. The following is only a sample of the possibilities available. Numerous other accommodation solutions may exist. Let's talk briefly about productivity. Under the ADA, an employer is not required to lower a production or performance standard that is applied uniformly to employees with and without disabilities. However, an employer may have to provide a reasonable accommodation to enable an employee with a disability to meet the standard. Ideally, employees will request reasonable accommodation before performance problems arise, or at least before they become too serious. Although the ADA does not require employees to ask for an accommodation at a specific time, the timing of a request for reasonable accommodation is important because an employer does not have to rescind discipline, including a termination or an evaluation warranted by poor performance. We're going to look at situations and then apply solutions to each situation. Our first one involves a production manager for a large manufacturer who had PTSD. His duties included working 40 hours per week with additional overtime to complete and oversee paperwork and shipping orders. He was not meeting his production standards. Let's look here at some accommodation ideas for difficulties in the area of concentration. Reducing distractions in the work area by providing space enclosures, sound absorption panels, or a private office can be effective. White noise machines, music players, environmental sound machines, or even a fan can help reduce background noise that can be distracting. Uninterrupted off work time, where an employee can concentrate on work tasks without answering the phone or responding to emails, can be helpful as well. Desk organizers come in a variety of styles and can help reduce clutter. Increase natural lighting or provide full spectrum lighting to improve productivity and alertness. Divide large assignments into smaller tasks and goals. Use auditory or written cues as appropriate, and restructure the job to include only essential functions to allow more time and energy for the completion of those. Memory aids such as schedulers, calendars, email add-ons, or apps can aid in concentration, but make sure the employee knows how to use them. Here is our accommodation solution. Initially, the production manager was allowed to work 30 hours per week for 1 month, increasing to 40 hours per week for the next month. Then the manager returned back to his regular schedule. He was also provided a work area that was away from noise and given earbuds to listen to music. He also met briefly with his supervisor once a week to discuss workload issues. Our next situation involves a project manager with PTSD who was having difficulty keeping up with all of the information involved in managing the project he had been assigned. He had difficulty with organization, time management, and prioritizing. Here we have accommodation ideas for difficulty with organization. The use of daily, weekly, and monthly task lists can improve organizational skills, as well as the use of calendars with automated reminders to highlight meetings and deadlines. Dividing large assignments into smaller, more manageable tasks and goals can help too. Using a color-coding scheme can help prioritize tasks. This can be as simple as using colored folders, paper clips, or highlighters. The use of electronic organizers or mobile devices and apps can aid in organization as well. Just remember that training in the apps and devices, too, may be necessary. With an accommodation of project management software, the manager was able to better keep himself organized and abreast of the work of other team members. Color coding helped him prioritize and stay on top of dates and deadlines. The bonus was that the software helped all of the project team members stay better organized and informed. Our next situation involves a customer service representative with arthritis and PTSD who experienced extreme fatigue during the afternoon, which had an effect on her speed. Here we have accommodation ideas for individuals dealing with fatigue. Allow a flexible work environment, which could include as much flexibility as possible and still be effective for both the employer and the employee. Allowing the employee to do mentally difficult tasks when he has the most focus and stamina works well too. Provide a goal-oriented workload. Reduce or eliminate physical exertion and workplace stress by implementing an ergonomic workstation design for easier access to files and other materials. Regulate temperature and lighting, and when possible, allow employee control. The customer service representative was accommodated with a wireless headset, an articulating keyboard tray, and an ergonomic keyboard. Our next situation is a federal office worker who had difficulty working an early schedule and also experienced fatigue, sleepiness, and the inability to concentrate in the afternoon due to sleep problems associated with his PTSD. His attendance was erratic. Now let's look at our accommodation ideas for sleep disturbances. Allow a flexible start time for an employee who may have trouble getting up and getting to work on time due to medication. Combine scheduled short breaks into one longer break for a rest or nap period. Important too is providing a place for the employee to rest during breaks. Allow the employee to work one consistent schedule to allow for a more consistent sleep schedule. And again, providing work areas with natural lighting can increase alertness and productivity. The federal worker was accommodated with a modified schedule and combined lunch and break times in order to have a rest. He used a folding chaise lounge that just fit into his cubicle and allowed him an hour-long daily nap. Here is a situation where an electrician with PTSD needed to attend periodic licensure trainings. He had difficulty taking effective notes and remembering information in the meetings. Now let's look here at accommodation ideas for memory. Allow the use of a job coach or provide a workplace mentor. Use auditory or written cues and reminders as needed. Allow additional training time in part or in full. Provide written checklists. Use a color coding scheme to prioritize tasks, remembering to use the same sequence of colors for quicker and more consistent recognition. The use of notebooks, planners, sticky notes, and apps to record information can be very helpful as reminders as long as you don't use too many of them and they prove ineffective. Provide labels and use bulletin boards to assist in locating items. Providing minutes of meetings and trainings is an accommodation that can assist all employees. As an accommodation, the electrician was provided an iPad with apps that would record the trainings. This enabled him to listen to the trainings as many times as he needed. He was also provided training on how to use the device as well as the apps. Let's look briefly at conduct issues. Under the ADA, an employer is not required to lower a conduct standard that is applied uniformly to employees with and without disabilities. However, an employer may have to provide a reasonable accommodation to enable an employee with a disability to meet the standard. Ideally, employees will request reasonable accommodation before conduct problems arise, or at least before they become too serious. Although the ADA does not require employees to ask for an accommodation at a specific time, the timing of a request for reasonable accommodation is important because an employer does not have to rescind discipline, including termination, warranted by misconduct. Employees should not assume that an employer knows that an accommodation is needed to address a conduct issue merely because the employer knows about the employee's disability. Nor does an employer's knowledge of an employee's disability require the employer to ask if the misbehavior is disability related. Our next situation involves a small school district's technology director who had difficulty managing his emotions while experiencing the side effects of a prescription change. He asked for an altered schedule when students weren't present and telework. Here we have accommodation ideas for handling emotions. Encourage the use of stress management techniques to deal with frustration. Allow telephone calls during work hours to doctors and others for needed support. Allow the presence of a support animal. Flexible breaks are another accommodation idea and can include combining shorter breaks into one longer one or dividing a longer one for shorter but more frequent breaks. Refer the employee to an employee assistance program, also known as EAP. The technology director was accommodated with telework and an altered schedule for 3 weeks, but needed to be on site when students were present to diagnose and fix problems during an upcoming period of online achievement testing. Our next situation is a paralegal who had been carjacked several years earlier and experienced significant anxiety concerning commutes after dark. This caused difficulty concentrating, irritability, and inappropriate interactions with coworkers. Now we will consider accommodations for working effectively. Develop clear expectations of responsibilities and the consequences of not meeting performance standards. Schedule consistent meetings with the employee to set goals and review progress before productivity gets too far behind. One of the most important accommodations and crucial part of the accommodation process is to allow for open communication. Establish written long-term and short-term goals so the employee can refer back to them. This paralegal was accommodated with the ability to have a support animal at work and a flexible schedule with work from home during periods of minimal sunlight. Our next situation involves a real estate appraiser with PTSD and migraine headaches who became very stressed when her work environment was noisy. She became angry and was insubordinate to her supervisor. Now we're going to look at accommodations for managing stress. A referral to counseling and employee assistance programs can be helpful and appropriate. So can allowing telephone calls during work hours to doctors and others for needed support, as well as allowing the presence of a support animal. Allow a flexible work environment, which may include flexible scheduling. This might mean adjusting the beginning and ending times of the employee's workday. Earlier, we talked about a modified break schedule, and that can mean anything that works for both the employee and the employer. Leave for counseling may be needed on a regular basis. Work from home or flexi place on a part-time or even a temporary basis can be helpful. Modifying environmental triggers such as sounds and smells can be effective too. Communication is key here in determining what those triggers may be. As an accommodation, the real estate appraiser was given a headset to help reduce noise in her environment. She was also given a light dimmer to control her workstation lighting that would help with her light sensitivity. She was also given leave for the migraines. Our next situation involves an employee with difficulty being in an enclosed space who walked away from a supervisor when she was cornered in a small space to talk about performance issues. She was disciplined for insubordination. Let's look here at accommodation ideas for interacting with coworkers. Encouraging the employee to walk away from frustrating situations and confrontations can be very effective, but it is always a good idea to have that plan worked out ahead of time so supervisors are aware of the issue. Allowing the employee to work from home part-time can help limit social situations that can be difficult. Providing partitions, taller cubicles, or closed doors to allow for privacy can also be helpful. Providing disability awareness training to coworkers and supervisors is a form of accommodation that can help educate others to the issues associated with PTSD. The employee disclosed to the employer that she had PTSD and found it necessary to walk away from situations where she was being required to stay in a small space. As an accommodation, the supervisor agreed, but would require the conversation to continue at a later time in a more open space if the conversation couldn't take place that way from the start. This situation involves a graphic designer with PTSD who experienced recurrent panic attacks when traveling during peak traffic times. He was required to drop off design orders and pick up print proofs from a print shop when necessary. Here we have accommodation ideas for panic attacks. These accommodations include allowing the employee to take a break and go to a place where she or he feels comfortable to use relaxation techniques, or to contact a support person when the feeling of panic or anxiety is escalating. Identifying and removing environmental triggers, such as particular smells or noises, can be vital in the reduction of a panic response. Allowing the presence of a support animal can be beneficial as well. Making a plan ahead of time is essential. The graphic designer was accommodated with a schedule that gave him the opportunity to drop off and pick up materials when coming to work in the morning. Our next situation deals with an attorney who, due to medication, experienced memory deficits that affected his ability to recall actions and activities during depositions. He became frustrated and began to miss and reschedule meetings. Now let's look at accommodation ideas for issues with attendance. Allowing flexible work environments can mean several different things and may include flexible scheduling, modified break schedules, leave for counseling, work from home or flexi-place, and modifying environmental triggers. As an accommodation, the attorney was given an alternate site to take depositions. He was moved to a smaller conference room with natural lighting away from office noise. The publication you're now seeing a view of can be found on our website at askjan.org. Look for the A to Z of disabilities at the top right-hand part of the screen. This concludes our presentation on providing reasonable accommodations to employees with PTSD. Please see the corresponding reference list for sources used in this module. We hope you found it helpful. If you need more information on workplace accommodations, please feel free to contact us at JAN. You can reach us toll-free at 800-526-7234 for voice or 877-781-9403 for TTY, or visit us on the web at askjan.org. You can also contact us through Skype and text and find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social networks. We hope to talk to you soon, and again, thank you for making Jan a part of your training program. Funding for this training module was provided through the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy.